Since the beads do not always seat on their own in this position, use a bead blasting tank or similar device to release the compressed air and expand the sidewalls of the tire so the beads become seated. Never use any type of flammable substance such as ether or propane to seat the beads on any tire. After the beads are sealed, the assembly must be checked for concentric seating. If the distance between the rim flange and the sidewall rib varies by more than 2/32 of an inch, the tire should be deflated and demounted to determine the problem. If the rim has been damaged by excessive heat or overloading, it may be too small for the diameter of the beads. If you suspect this type of damage, deflate the tire and remove the rim or wheel from service. To protect you from the dangers of this and other conditions, OSHA regulations state the maximum inflation pressure to seat the beads outside a restraining device is 5 psi.
Before attempting to inflate any tubeless radial tire on a single-piece rim, make sure you understand the OSHA requirements for all truck tire inflation devices.
The first required component is a clip-on air chuck. Clip-on chucks come in a variety of different styles, and by design they are not permanently attached to the valve stem. Air chucks that require the technician to hold the device on the valve stem and those that are screwed on using the threads are not considered OSHA compliant. In order to prevent the accidental overinflation of a tire, OSHA also requires the use of an inline valve with a pressure gauge or a presettable regulator. The inline valve allows technicians to control the airflow to the tire, and the built-in pressure gauge makes it possible to check the inflation pressure without approaching the assembly. Presettable regulators make it possible to simultaneously inflate multiple tires to the same, or in other cases, different inflation pressures. As long as electronic inflation equipment can be set so it cannot exceed a specific pressure, and all other OSHA requirements are met, it can be used to inflate truck tires. The next component for an OSHA-compliant inflation device is a sufficient length of hose. While federal OSHA does not specify the length of the hose, it must be long enough to keep the technician out of the trajectory area of the tire throughout the inflation process. But the most important component is the restraining device, also known as the safety cage. The sole purpose of the restraining device is to prevent the components or assembly from becoming projectiles should they separate during the inflation process. Tubeless radial truck tires can suddenly lose inflation pressure for a variety of reasons, and the restraining device prevents the assembly from being thrown outside the device, no matter how the force is transferred. That's the main reason why restraining device manufacturers do not recommend bolting cages to the floor. When the force is transferred from the tire to the device, the heads of the bolts could snap off and create additional projectiles. The best practice is to position the restraining device in a clearly marked area at least 1 foot from any flat, solid surface. If more than one restraining device is being used at the same time, equipment manufacturers recommend at least 3 to 5 feet between the cages. Before placing any truck tire and wheel assembly in a restraining device, technicians should carefully inspect it for any damage that may decrease its effectiveness. This includes cracks at the welds, cracked or broken components, bent or sprung components, or severe pitting from corrosion. If any of these conditions are present, the restraining device must be immediately removed from service.
By visually inspecting restraining devices on a daily basis, you give yourself and your fellow employees an added layer of protection if a damaged tire suddenly releases its pressure during inflation. The final step in the truck tire inflation process should always include a restraining device. Technicians should know that most of the serious and fatal injuries that are associated with a sudden release of pressure occur when the tire is being inflated outside the safety cage.
With the beads properly seated and the valve core still removed, the tire and wheel assembly should be placed in an approved restraining device. Using an OSHA-compliant inflation system, begin to inflate the tire and listen for any popping sounds. In order to identify any potential signs of weakness or irregularity, the assembly should be carefully inspected at 20 psi. While inspecting the tire, do not place your hands inside the restraining device or position your head near the sidewall of the tire. Look for bulges that may indicate a zipper rupture or any other type of damage that may result in the sudden release of pressure.
Oh, God.
If any of these conditions are present, the tire should be made unusable and scrapped. Zipper ruptures are typically identified by the popping sound that the damaged sidewall cables make as they break during the inflation process. Studies have shown that most zipper ruptures occur between 20 and 120 psi. But their unpredictability and resulting effect on the restraining device can cause serious injury if technicians are in the trajectory of the assembly during inflation. Rims that have been damaged by excessive heat can also result in the sudden release of inflation pressure. For these reasons alone, you should always make sure that you are a safe distance from any truck tire being inflated in a restraining device. That's also why you should inflate truck tires with the valve core removed, so the assembly can be deflated without approaching the trajectory area. On new radial truck tires, inflate the tire to the recommended fleet inflation pressure. If that pressure is not available, inflate the tire to the maximum pressure listed on the sidewall. After installing a new valve core, verify the inflation pressure with a calibrated air gauge and adjust the pressure if necessary. A checking station should be used on a regular basis to verify the accuracy of air gauges. On all radial truck tires other than new, such as used, retreaded, or repaired, the tire should be overinflated to 20 psi over the maximum inflation pressure listed on the sidewall. When inspecting a radial truck tire for a zipper rupture, never inflate the tire beyond the maximum inflation pressure stamped on the wheel or rim. If the tire does not show any signs of a zipper rupture during the overinflation period, deflate the tire, install the valve core, check the inflation pressure, and adjust it to fleet recommendations or the pressure listed on the sidewall. The final step is to install an inflate-through metal valve cap or a standard metal valve cap to protect the valve core from dirt and corrosion.
We hope this information on tubeless radial truck tire service will help you create a safer working environment in the shop and improve safety on our highways. On behalf of Michelin North America, I'm Doug Jones. Thanks for watching.